Bleh. Oh, whoa. Wait, where am I? What's going on? Who are you? I was just thinking that it's been a little while since the last Marvel thing that I've had to discuss. It's been like, what, 2 weeks? I mean, if there's two things I can count on nowadays, it's Star Trek shows and Marvel projects coming out fairly regularly. And I am not complaining about that because, my friends, I'm here to review the latest episode of the newest Marvel show, Moon Knight, Episode 1, The Goldfish Problem. I've actually been really anticipating this show. To give you all just sort of a little bit of my background, I know nothing about the Moon Knight character. As I've always kind of said, I'm more of a DC fangirl than I am a Marvel fangirl, and so some of the more off the beaten path Marvel superheroes I really know nothing about. But I do always love the like darker, more paranormal, supernatural side of superhero universes. Like Constantine and Swamp Thing are like my favorite characters, Zatanna too, over in the DC universe. So I've been fairly anticipating the show. And then also Oscar Isaacs, well, he's not like an actor that I'm like standing or anything like that as I would like Keanu Reeves, let's say, or Ethan Peck. He is an actor that I've always like really loved in everything that I've seen him in. So I was coming into this show with zero expectations, but a lot of hype. And now I have to say, having seen the first episode of the show, I'm definitely kind of hooked by this. I'm not exactly jumping super into the bandwagon yet. It hasn't like been like, oh, this was amazing. But there's elements here that I thought were interesting and intriguing, especially for a Marvel project. Also, before I get much further, I'm just going to warn, I'm going to go full into spoilers here in my discussion, so just be warned for that. But I think the first thing to talk about would obviously be Oscar Isaacs, who's playing at least two roles in this show, but we're mainly focusing on the character of Steven here, and I really enjoyed his performance. I don't think Steven was one of the best written characters, even for the Disney Plus protagonists, but I do think that Oscar Isaacs brings a really good affability to him. His accent really threw me for a little while there, just because I'm so used to hearing him with the accent that he uses towards the end of the episode that I was like, it's just weird. Whenever like actors, like Benedict Cumberbatch has the same thing whenever he does like an American accent, I'm like, I'm thrown for a hot minute, just sort of settling into whatever this new accent is that he's using. But he does like bring a good warmth to the character. And I like how he kind of talks to himself at certain moments, maybe mirroring a little bit of his isolation as well as the sort of DID that we know he is dealing with, dissociative identity disorder. I also should note too, before we get also much further, that I do know people with dissociative identity disorder. However, I myself don't know much about it, so I can't really speak on whether the show is representing it well or badly or anything like that. And I do know that there are a lot of stereotypes going with depictions of dissociative identity disorder, so I'm not really going to speak on that. But if you are someone that knows more about it or has DID, I would love to learn more if you're willing to educate me. So please let me know down in the comments anything that you wish me to know about the representation of the show, because I would love to learn more about whether it was good or whether it was bad. But regardless of that, I did enjoy his representation of the character. You know what he reminded me of most? He reminded me most of Dan from over in Doctor Who Flux. His introduction of sort of like the guy who wanted to be like, have all this knowledge about the museum and teaching kids about the history, but wasn't actually good enough to be the tour guide, even though he had all that knowledge and was clearly a very affable tour guide. In Dan's introduction, while the rest of Doctor Who Flux wasn't particularly good, Dan's introduction worked very well, and it similarly works here, even though the actual writing of the character isn't necessarily the strongest. That being said, I like the little small ways that we start to get introduced to him losing time, where he sort of references things like, someone asked me on a date, I wasn't sure, and he kind of rolls with it a little bit, so we just sort of see this something that he's rolled with the punches. And I did also like him talking to like the frozen statue man, that's his only friend, again highlighting his isolation, and that's who the person he can sort of unburden to in these moments. And he just like, I'm wondering what that statue guy's just thinking. Is like, this guy shackles himself to his bed. That's a whole lot. And I did like the sort of rituals that he set up for himself to protect himself. But then I think probably the most fun sequence of the entire episode, obviously, was him jumping to this village where he gets to meet Ethan Hawke's character. And all the sequences where he's sort of like jumping in different spaces and getting sort of unsure of where he's going to land next, really did give a good indication of putting me in his shoes of like how disoriented he must be throughout this whole bit. And so I really loved every time he jumped, and we just get like a little bit further into the like chase sequence that he got wrapped up in. And my favorite moment during all of that, by the way, was when he threw the gun And the voice in his head said, "Did you just throw the gun? I'm not good at this." Absolutely wonderful. The chase sequence was fine, but the jumps in time did add a little bit more to it than what was a standard sort of action sequence. That being said, him running into Ethan Hawke was really interesting. I did like the way that we get to see his powers with him sort of like, oh, judging people whether they're good or bad, and if it could be something that happens in their future. So we're already getting this sort of like Minority Report through like Egyptian mythology here. Again, also the usage of Egyptian mythology is something like strange or mysterious. Again, a common trope in sort of these things, which I know can be offensive to people whose that culture is actually representing. So it's something to at least be aware of, though again, I can't really speak on it or note about it. But I do like this sort of Minority Report sort of presaging crime. You could have predicted and stopped Hitler sort of thing here going on with Aramat, the sort of Egyptian god that Ethan Hawke is following. And it's nice to see Ethan Hawke. Ethan Hawke's always solid in everything. He's given the very like cult leader vibes in a lot of the stuff that he does. He does a good job with it. And so I loved all of that. I thought that was a lot of fun. And also the bit where he's like trying to give the scarab and unable to do it. I've seen sequences like that before where someone's like controlling someone's body, that sort of thing. But it was well handled here for the most part. But I also did really enjoy the sequence when he's finally at home and he gets to go on his date with the steak girl, and it turns out he's missed several days of his life. And he, again, not the most original. Like, I definitely saw that coming, that he wasn't going to make the date. But Oscar Isaacs really sells it well. Like, he is a good actor that even if it's not the most original moment, I really feel for the character in it because he just makes you feel how isolated and lonely he feels. But then from there, I really liked him discovering the like cell phone and everything through context clues, like moving the table and like figuring it out. I thought that was fairly clever, and him sort of being off-put by someone calling him Mark. So again, I'm sort of curious with the history here. Again, I don't know much about the Moon Knight character at all, so I'm sort of curious, like, is the Mark personality someone that's been with him his entire life? Is it just someone that he showed up? Is he just sort of been knowing about this past 2 weeks? So I like that we don't really get a full sense of how long this has been going on. And so I'm curious to see how that's going to develop throughout the series. And then I thought the sequence where he's running from himself, or whatever this like visualization of this Egyptian god was really horrific. And some of the visuals with mirrors I thought were excellent throughout this. I always love like utilizations of mirrors in intriguing ways for visuals, and there's definitely some good ones here. And then the older woman sort of getting scared of him also I thought was a really good depiction, because she would be like kind of freaked out by him. And then we get a confrontation with Ethan Hawke where again he sort of shows his ideology, very Minority Report, like we can judge people before they actually commit a crime and the ethics of that and if that's right or wrong. So that's that sort of idea. So I'm curious if they're going to add more to that ideology moving into future episodes. I really hope so, because otherwise it's just like something I've seen already in Minority Report. It's not bad. It's an interesting ethical question to dive into, but I hope they put their own little spin on it. But then we sort of get Steven having to cede control over to Mark, who turns into I'm assuming the titular Moon Knight, and kills this thing that's going after him. I also liked the little implication here that Steven seems to know Mark. Like, he's been trying to reject him and not think about him. We've gotten the indication that this is new for Steven, but I like the little hint towards the end here that he knows Mark, and he's been trying to actively ignore him, even though he's not really admitted it to himself. So I liked that sort of little hints there. I don't know if that's actually going to be the case, but I found it to be kind of interesting. So that's basically all my thoughts on the episode. I thought a lot of it was really well done. I'm really enjoying Oscar Isaacs' performance, and some of the visualizations and the jumps in times are adding a clever twist on what's a fairly standard tale so far, but the sort of like different take on those sort of standard tales is at least bringing me enough interest to the show to be intrigued by how it's going to build out its mythology and things moving forward. So that's everything that I have. I'd love to hear all your thoughts in the comments below. Did you enjoy the first episode of Moon Knight? Let me know. And beyond all that, thank you so much for watching, my friends. I'll be here in a few days for the review of the latest episode of Star Trek Picard, so stick around for that. And then I'm thinking I'm probably going to review the Halo series moving forward. So let me know if you're interested in me doing more of those, if you're following along with the Halo show. But beyond all of that, thank you so much for watching, and I hope that you, as always, my friends, live long and prosper. Mwah.